So there's been some new information about the AMD RX 6700 XT and when that's going to be releasing onto the market. And I thought it'd be a good time to make another video about the 6700 XT, given everything that's been happening in the GPU market and how there's simply no graphics cards available. So maybe the 6700 XT is the one that you're going to have to get. So we have a tweet here from Andreas Schilling, who is the editor at Hardware Lux, and he wrote, soon, sometime in first half of 2021, or is it quarter one? Radeon RX 6700 XT, 1440p gaming, 12GB of G6, and he's got the logo there for the 6700 XT. And we had something similar on video cards as well, so they corroborated that information, and they have March 2021 for the release date of the 6700 XT, and I think that's very plausible given that 3060 is also going to be coming out at the end of February or basically March. So I think maybe AMD wants to put the 6700 XT up against the 3060. Now, if we take a look at the rest of the specs here, we've got the Radeon RX 6700 XT with the Navi 22 XT GPU, and it's going to have 40 compute units. And essentially that's kind of the same as the last generation 5700 XT that also had 40 compute units, but obviously that was with the RDNA 1 architecture, and now the 6700 XT will have the RDNA 2 architecture with more infinity cache and all of the extras that you get with a new generation bump. But it will have the same number of cores. The memory will be 12GB of G6 on a 192-bit bus, and it's looking like the TGP of the card will be around 211 watts to 186 watts. So Cortex here has a pretty interesting comparison between the old generation, the 5700 XT versus the 6700 XT. And he's got here that the 5700 XT was actually on 256-bit memory bus, which had 448GB per second of memory bandwidth, but the 6700 XT is actually on the 192-bit memory bus with 384GB per second of memory bandwidth. So I'm guessing that the infinity cache on the 6700 XT will probably make up the difference. But in terms of real-world performance, I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference, given that the 6700 XT will have infinity cache. But it is something to note that it's not improved upon from last generation. And the other thing here is that the 5700 XT required the 8+6 pin power connector, whereas the new card, the 6700 XT, only requires the 1 8-pin. So for people who are looking to overclock the card, there's probably less potential on this, given that it's already at 200 watts anyways, and the 1 8-pin power connector can really only do 150 watts, plus the PCIe card lane can do 75 watts. So you're really not looking at much extra power in terms of overclocking there. So in terms of performance, I've already done a video about this, and you can check that video out where I looked at the Nvidia 3060 cards versus the AMD 6700 cards, and I looked at the performance of all of those cards. But I've taken the graphics from that video because the information is still relevant. So as you can see here in the relative performance for the 4K chart, the 6700 XT will be about 62% of the 6900 XT, and we use 4K because it stresses the GPU out the most and the CPU the least. So as you can see there, it will be about 62% of the 6900 XT, and that makes sense because it has 40 compute units and the 6900 XT has 80 compute units, so roughly half of that 6900 XT. And you can see here that it's very close to the RTX 2080 Super, and the RTX 2080 Super is no slouch. It's a great video card, and you can also see it's very close to the RTX 3060 Ti, which is at around 65%. So let's talk about price and availability. Now, this is completely my own speculation, and I haven't got this information from anyone, and I could be completely wrong. So don't go out there and spread misinformation that these are the right prices. It's just me speculating. And I think the 6700 XT will be roughly around the same price as the 3060 Ti, given the performance of those two cards, and given the fact that there's simply no GPUs out on the market. There's simply no reason for AMD to price it lower. So I think it's going to be around 400, maybe even 450, because it's got more VRAM than the 3060 Ti, which has 8 GB. So I think AMD might just say, well, we got a lot of flack for the 6800 XT being too low or not being the MSRP because all of those cars are like $1,000 now. We might just price this one a little bit higher because, well, we're just going to charge everybody higher, and then the price will just adjust itself on the market price. And so as you can see there, I've also got the market price, and the 6700 XT, once stock starts to dwindle on this, then you could possibly see this at $600 at secondary retailers, such as like when you find it on eBay. Right now, the only place for you guys to get a GPU is on the secondary market. Now, in terms of availability, that's probably been their biggest issue in my opinion. And we know AMD has chosen PS5 and Xbox Series X consoles over their CPUs and GPUs. And they've also had problems with their shipping and their scalping issues. And so they've had a lot of issues, people working from home in the pandemic, driving up the demand higher. But I think the biggest issue is actually mining for GPUs in general, not just AMD, because even though Nvidia's cards perform better in mining this generation, well, that still sends the demand up for the GPUs in general. Now, if you look at this chart, this is 1 Ether equals $1,330, and the price has been going up since almost March of last year. And if you look at this 3-month chart of Ethereum, it's been over $1,000 since the start of January, so it could start building support here at $1,000 or $1,300. And if it does, then I could see the price of Ethereum going higher. And this is not financial information, but just something for you guys to be aware of. If the price of Ethereum goes higher, then the graphics cards will end up going higher as well, because people use that to mine Ethereum. So my message to gamers is that if you've been waiting for a GPU, and if you've been waiting for a 3080 or the 3070 for the past 4 or 5 months, well, consider a 6700 XT. It's going to be roughly the same as a 3060 Ti or a 2080 Super. And I think you can go and check out video benchmarks of how those cards perform to see how the 6700 XT performs. So I think that should be a pretty reasonable card for the next couple of years. And so if you buy that, and then I guess later on, if a 3080 or a 3070 becomes available, then you can trade that. But in terms of what you've been missing out on, if you've been waiting for an Nvidia card to try ray tracing or DLSS, I don't think you'd be missing out all that much, because if you look at this Wikipedia table, this lists all of the games with ray tracing and DLSS, and as you can see, there aren't that many ray tracing games out there at the moment. So just Cyberpunk 2077 and Control maybe making full use of ray tracing, but aside from that, some of the other titles don't use full on ray tracing. So I think right now you wouldn't really be missing all that much if you end up with a 6700 XT, which obviously doesn't have as much ray tracing games right now, and the performance of ray tracing isn't as good on the AMD cards, but I don't think you'd be missing that much. Okay, so that's going to be it for this one. If you like this video, make sure to click on the like button, also to subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.